Hey guys, welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. Maya here, and today is the day that a lot of you have been waiting for. Today is day one of the window greenhouse construction, and I'm pretty excited. I've got all my materials. I actually even got one of my little brothers here to help. I wasn't expecting that, so it's always nice whenever they show up and they say, hey, I'll help you get something done. I'm gonna do my very best to give you as much detail about what we're doing and why we're doing it as I can. That's probably gonna make the video a little long, but I'm gonna do my best to film the video so that you have all the information you need to do something like this for yourself. All right, let's go talk about a few things and see the area where we're gonna be putting the greenhouse in. Okay, real quick, I'm standing inside the garden itself. As you can see behind me, there's a yellow ladder. That is actually holding our GoPro. We will be time-lapsing the entire construction build from start to finish, and I'm pretty excited about that video. That'll be a separate video that'll be just the time-lapse, and then we'll have this video, which is the how-to. First step, we had to move Spotted Pig and Journey Pig to this half of the garden so we can open up the 2/3 that they've been living on for the build. We're about to break ground. So there's a couple of things we're gonna go ahead and line out on the front end. So we decided on a design. Because of a few influences on our property already, we've settled in on a shape, and that is we're going to essentially mimic the chicken coop that I built. So now that we've decided on what shape it's gonna be, let's go over a few dimensions. It's gonna be a 12-foot by 10-foot. 10-foot being the sides, the 12-foot will be the front and the back. The door will be on the side right behind me, facing south. We feel like that gives it the best sun. It's orienting, what's the word? Orientation. But yeah, that's not the word. It's ing, like orientating. I don't know. No, that can't be a word. The orientation of the greenhouse will be the same and in line with the sitting pavilion that we're gonna do this spring. It'll tie in with some design aspects with the chicken coop. And so even though Jessica's style is not like mine, she likes everything hodgepodge. I do that for her. I can make everything the same hodgepodge, which is still me getting what I want because, you know, even though it's hodgepodge, it's like matching hodgepodge. And so that's okay with me. So this is like our middle ground of compromise is everything can be hodgepodge and thrown together, but it's all gonna be the same style of hodgepodge. So if that makes sense. First thing we're gonna do is kind of mark off where everything's going. We're gonna dig some holes for our corner posts, and then from there we're gonna start the framing. So let's get started. Hey Noah.
Hello.
All right, so Noah is actually my last brother who's not married. Too bad, he's in a very serious relationship with a girl that we love, who's named Maddie. Say hi, Maddie.
Hi, Maddie.
Hopefully she watches this video. If not, you can give her crap for it later.
I will.
Not too much though. Happy wife, happy life. Or happy girlfriend, happy life.
Right, the correct word that Jeremiah was looking for is orientating. Like I said before, it is just another word for orient or orientate.
Orientate.
Or orientation.
So it is orientating. So we're orientating it, which still sounds wrong, to be in line with the chicken coop and the sitting pavilion, and it'll all kind of just flow together. All right, you ready to start marking this off?
Yes, sir.
Little brothers, man. Little brothers. The first thing we did was measure off a square and marked it with these essentially garden stakes. When you're doing something like a greenhouse, it doesn't have to be super exact. We're gonna dig some holes. We're actually gonna set these in concrete. We're not gonna go super deep. It's not gonna have a bunch of pressure on it like a fence would, so you don't have to go 2 feet down. But I think we're gonna go 12 to 18 inches. We are gonna concrete them to give it some stability so it can withstand winds and being pushed, and you know, it'll last longer, but it doesn't have to be the equivalent of a fence. As far as measuring everything off, it doesn't have to be perfect. We eyeballed the center, we took a couple of measurements and got it close enough, and then from there we just measured off and made sure that each stake was, you know, like this run right here was 10 foot from this stake to that stake. Well, then we measured 10 foot and made sure it said 10 foot. From that stake to the next one, we measured 12, 10, 12. It all kind of equaled out within an inch. That's all we needed. So now Noah's digging post holes. Those are just a standard post hole digger. We're going 12 to 18 inches down. Then we're gonna start putting the posts in and get the base set up. Okay, so we dug all 4 holes, and just at that time, Jessica pulls up from going and getting Jackson Asher and was like, oh, I thought it was going to be closer to the fence. I was like, oh, I don't remember that conversation. So, what Mama wants, Mama gets. We filled in the front 2 holes and moved it towards the fence. So now we're 4 foot off the fence rather than being more centered on the space. It's actually kind of funny. You'll see it on the time-lapse video where I kind of stand there and move my hands real quick because I'm like, what? You wanted it closer to the fence? And then you see me digging holes and filling in the 2 front holes. So, all right, let's get these posts set. Noah, my little bro, is setting the post temporarily in each hole to give us an idea of where they go. Then we're going to level and brace them, right? Is that what you want to do?
Yes, sir.
Level and brace them, and then we're going to dump the concrete in, let that set up for a second, and then we'll start the band and the framing. Also, on this particular project, we ended up purchasing the wood for the greenhouse. And the reason why is because I'm running kind of low on our salvaged and repurposed wood because I used up so much of it on the chicken coop, which was pretty much free. For this particular project, it being more time sensitive, we need to get it done so we can get our seedlings started and things like that. I couldn't wait, and that's what we've done before. But for this particular project, I want to get it done soon, and I didn't have the lumber I needed, so we went ahead and budgeted for purchasing it. So I'll give you the details we have of what we spent and kind of just give you a heads up if you're going to purchase the materials. But also understand that, you know, if you had the time to be patient and save up salvage materials, you could do that as well. So because of the shape that we're doing, the 4x4s on the front or the south side of the greenhouse, the side that'll have the door, are 10-foot 4x4s. They are treated because they're coming in contact with the ground. The back side is only going to be 8 foot. When this is all said and done, the front will be 8 foot tall and the back end of the greenhouse will be 6 foot tall. So we're about to brace. You can cut your own stakes using a skill saw. And essentially, when you go to brace a 4x4, you've got to hit it on 2 different axes or 2 different points. So a north-south brace and an east-west brace. And you're gonna level all 4 of the posts. As you're checking level, you will also be checking the distance between your 4x4s. Reason you do that is because we got 12-foot 2x6s. For a 12-foot 2x6 to line up properly, there's got to be a certain distance between each 4x4 for them to sit flush or inset or whatever you're trying to accomplish. I'll show you guys that once we get it up. But if you don't account for those measurements now, when you go to do that, it'll be off. And if you've already concreted everything, then you'll be, you know, unable to fix it or to address it. Once they're all braced, we're going to go ahead and put our 2x6 band across the top. The band is essentially a boards that we're nailing or screwing to the outside that'll hold the rafters, that'll hold the roof. Okay, so we've got 2 stakes hammered into the ground with a sledgehammer. There's one out there on the left, and there's one there. We're going to run 2x4s up to the 4x4 and screw it in. That'll help hold it in place. All right, there's little baby Noah, who doesn't like being on camera, and so this is my way of older brother torture. I'll just film him. Go away, he says. All right, we gotta level these, right?
No.
Yes.
Plumb. You don't level them. You plumb them.
You just eyeball it.
So when you go to level something vertically, I'm pretty sure it's called plumb. Maybe. I just call it leveling it. So, you know, you call it whatever you want. Make sure it's going straight up and down on both sides. There are multiple kinds of levels you can use. You have your regular old 4-foot level, which I have here. Well, this is actually called a post level. As you can see, it goes right on the post. Good job, guys. Way to go. What are you guys doing? Wow, Benny.
That was a great scoop. Good job.
You using a shovel?
Yeah.
What are you scooping? Hey, what are you scooping?
Dirt.
Dirt?
Guess what? Oh.
You too fast. All right, gotta get back to the greenhouse. Ben, guess what? I love you. Alright, so we were almost ready to start putting the 2x6s up, and then I made a mistake, which is a pretty big mistake. I got 10-foot 2x6s to be our rafters. Problem with that is that we're doing the pitch we're doing. Once you calculate the angle in cutting the 2 and 12 pitch into the 2x10s, the way we have it set up, the 2x10s will be about 2 inches short, which will cause some structural stuff that I don't want to risk. So instead of running back and getting 2x12s or 2x6s that are 12 foot long, I'm going to use the 10 foot, but we're going to have to widen or essentially move the holes for these 4x4s up about 4 inches, which will make the dimensions of the greenhouse a little less than 10, but it won't be noticeable enough, or it won't matter enough to make it any less functional. Still working, at least for a little bit. Our goal is to get at least the framing on the roof up, so that means the outside band and the rafters. I don't think it'll take us that much longer. We made some mistakes, had to fix some things, so that's why we're running a little behind. Probably won't work through the night much, but for this particular point in the job, I wanted to get to the roof part, so that way whenever Noah has to go back to work, I can finish up the rest of the details on my own while I've got his help, and it takes 2 people to do this. Hey guys, I'm down here in Jessica's new greenhouse. As you can probably tell, it's already finished. Unfortunately, as some things do happen, small mistakes were made, accidents happen. Somehow some footage has gotten deleted or misplaced and we can't seem to find it. I should be able to explain what's missing, even though it's already finished. And as I continue to edit this and get ready to release it, if there is anything else missing, I'll probably just come back down here and pop in and shoot a quick clip explaining it. That way I don't have to leave anything out that I felt like was important for the how-to. One of the things that got misplaced was talking about the framing, how we went ahead and did it, the pitch of the roof, and a couple of small details about that. So I'm gonna go over that real quick as best I can. So it's all 2x6 lumber. These are 10-foot long pieces. Each end, the front and the back, is cut at an angle, and there's another 2x6 that sits flush on the front end. You can see it really good with the outside 2x6s. So like this one being a really good example. You see the angle right here, and then the board goes up, and then this all sits flush. That's called the pitch of the roof, and that's how you calculate it. This roof is a 2 and 12 pitch. So I'm gonna run over to the garage and get out a board and show you the tool that you would use to calculate that and figure out the pitch and make sure that everything lines up and everything fits together like it's supposed to. Like I said, this is a 2 and 12 pitched roof. What that exactly means is that for every foot that you're moving in the building, the roof is dropping 2 inches. So from the top to the bottom, we're dropping a total of 20 inches because it's a 10-foot building, if that makes sense. So on this greenhouse, the front end where the door is right behind me, that is a 8-foot tall. It's where we put the 2x6 and then cut everything off, and that's going to descend to just over 6 feet on the back side, which is still given plenty of clearance for watering and different things, and being able to slide plant trays in and all that. So that's how I calculated the roof. 2 and 12 is a pretty normal. It's the same pitch that I use in the chicken coop. It's the same pitch that we use in all the goat barns. Let me show you the tool that you'll use and how you'll mark your rafters. So this is a speed square, or a carpenter square. I've heard it called multiple different things. I just call it a speed square. This is what you'll use, this triangle, to calculate your roof pitches and mark your lines. I also use it to mark with straight lines when I'm cutting things off. And so right here you'll see all these numbers. And if you're going to be calculating the pitch of a roof, you would use what's called the common, which is this set of numbers right here. Alright, and so what you do is you'd set this flush and you'd kick this corner out, alright, until it hits the 2. Okay? Now once it's on the 2, as you can see, the 2 here is lined up with the wood. You would trace this line, right, and you would cut that. Now you get your measurement, you know, say it's 140 inches, whatever it ends up being. On this side, you would want to cut the exact same angle. So that's how you cut your rafters and your end cap bands and all that stuff. That'll allow everything to kind of fit together and give it the most stability. So putting the first one on the band on the outside, that's easy because you'll just nail that directly into your 4x4s. all the way around. Once you get that done, you're gonna have to move inside and do your rafters. Now, how you install your rafters could be done a number of ways, but here's the way we always do it. And I think this is also the most structurally sound way to do it. This is also something I've heard called multiple different names: power blocks, nailer blocks, whichever, it doesn't really matter. It does the same function. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The band's on the outside, and as you can see, you know, this is a rafter, this is a rafter, there's a block in between. And so essentially what we did is we used the scrap 2x6 after cutting all the angles and the different things, and we essentially made blocks that this 2x6 is nailed from the outside into that block. This is a 24-inch gap, and then this one is nailed to the outside of the block also. And as you can see, that has a block just for this one rafter. There wasn't two. And then this one also has a block with a 24-inch gap on both sides, and that's 24 on center. You would just repeat the process on the front end. And as you can see in the time lapse, me and Noah came in and both of us held them up and nailed them in together. And once that was done, the framing was done and we were ready to move forward. We're back at the greenhouse project. So I've got the 4x4s cut in place. The other thing we did is we went and got a roll of garden fabric. This was $60 at Sam's. It's 400 foot by 4 foot wide. And we laid that out. As you can see, it overlaps the 4x4s on all edges. Essentially, that's gonna act as our barrier for the mud and the gravel. I've got the tractor behind me. I've got the fence taken back. I'm about to pull out that T-post, and then I'm gonna fill this up with gravel. Once the gravel's in and leveled, I'm gonna get the roof done. Gravel's in. Jessica came out and helped me get it all leveled and distributed. It was kind of hard, but she did a good job helping. As you can see, that's essentially 3.5 inches deep all the way around of what's called French drain or ballast, sea ballast gravel. The reason you'd use that is because it lets water pass through it. It's different than like gravel you'd use for like your road, which is called SB2. The reason why is because SB2 contains donophyll, which is like a sandy substance, and it compacts, which helps hold the road together, which would be counterproductive to putting it in a greenhouse because you want water to run off. This is essentially enables Jessica to water freely and not have to stand in water or have water pull up while she's working. It'll run off and underneath the gravel and out from the 4x4s. So there you have it. The thing I'm gonna move on to now is I've got to put in my 4-inch screws on my 2x6 band. I've got too much 4x4 overhanging on this side, especially a little bit on that side. So I've got to cut those off flush, and then I'm going to be running what you call runners. Runners are essentially a 1x4 running opposite to your rafters. So as you can see, rafters are running this way, runners will run this way. You'll place the runners at the front, the back, and I'm gonna do one in the middle, and then I'm also gonna do all the outside edges. Another big benefit of the runner boards is that it allows you to maneuver the whole roof without having to have your joints line up on one of the 2x6 rafters. So we got the runners on, like I said before, one at the bottom before the angle changes, one at the top, and then I put 2 in the middle. The reason I did that is because this is actually where the roofing panels are going to screw to. So the more points of contact, the stronger it is against winds and things like that. It probably would have been fine with just one down the middle, but adding an extra one gives it a little bit of added strength and a little bit more places to screw down to. So, and I had the extra 1x4, so I went ahead and did it. On something like a barn or like for the chicken coop, for example, you would not need to run these pieces in between the runs. I did this for a specific reason because it was a greenhouse. And let me get down off this ladder and I'll show you what I got and the reason why I did that. They sell these online. This is made by the same company that the clear fiberglass panels are. These run underneath a ridge on the outside edge. It's going to stack up one after another and run straight down this way, and that'll seal off that edge and that edge. So I ran these spacers in between to give something for this to screw down to and to essentially seal off the roof completely to keep the heat in. Like I said, you wouldn't have to do that for a different kind of building. I found that they make this, which is essentially the exact same shape. It'll serve the exact same purpose, only this is better because these are flexible foam, whereas the other ones are hard plastic. This is what I'm going to use to seal off the ridges under each panel. It'll stack up and run underneath each panel on the top and the bottom runner board. The combination of these two things essentially make the roof pretty much airtight. I'm not gonna put these on yet. I'm actually going to go ahead and paint all of the rafters, the runner boards, the corner posts, and essentially all the wood that we have installed so far. So I'm gonna get out the paint sprayer. I'm gonna go ahead and hit this with primer, let that dry for about 30 minutes, and then I'm gonna hit it with our white paint. We're gonna be whiting out all the wood in the windows. Personally, I think it's gonna look awesome with the white, so we get all the details and the color from the flowers on the outside and stuff in. So as you can tell, painting, especially with a sprayer, is a messy job. But she's white, it looks good. It took me about an hour or so. Got paint in my hair, I'm sure. Anyways, I'm gonna let this dry just for a minute. Turned out pretty cool. As soon as it's dry, I'm going to put on the pieces for sealing the roof. And as I'm putting them on, I'll go ahead and set the roofing panels up there and get it all to fit right. And I'll show you how they go on, where you screw it down at. Once I get this roof on, that's gonna give me a dry area to work. Even if it rains from this point on, I'll still be able to come out and work on the greenhouse. I'll just work internal. So I'll work underneath the roof and on the gravel, which keeps it dry and not muddy. I'm up on a ladder, showing you guys the little plastic pieces that are gonna be used to seal off the roof. I've got one of the roofing panels up here. It's lined across the outside edge of this runner. I have screwed it down through the screw holes. When you put these up, make sure to bring a piece of the roofing with it so you can test fit it and make sure that you secure this in the right place. Because if you just throw it up there without checking, when you go to put your roofing panel up, it could shift your roof out of alignment. And if it gets out of alignment on the first piece, it'll be out of alignment through the rest of the roof. So I went ahead and tested everything, made sure it was gonna fit right and everything was lined up. Then I screwed it down. This ridge just sits over, and then when I go to screw this down with the self-tapping screws on the runner boards right here, it'll hold this tight. Now that I've got the strip on there, the one thing I'm gonna do before I start securing the panels down is I'm gonna run a line of this putty-like sealer. It kind of rolls out like tape. It's a lot like putty. It has a lot of stretch to it. And essentially, I'm gonna run a strip of that on the top of this piece. So that way when my screws go down to sink the roofing panel onto the roof, it'll press this down, and when the heat comes in the morning, it will essentially activate the adhesive and completely seal off this edge. Now once you get the first panel in, everything else goes really smoothly. These are all, they all latch together. So once you get your first piece in, you just latch the rest of them on. So once you lay them down, one ridge of each panel overlaps. That keeps it watertight. I'm actually just gonna use a staple gun, like a hand stapler, and staple this down in place once I have it where I want it. And that way it doesn't shift while I'm moving the panel. This is what your end result should look like. If you notice, in securing the roof panels, I ran screws up and down all the outside edges, but I also, when I screwed down one of the valleys, I would skip one and then screw down the next one. And that gives you plenty of bite for your screws and to hold the panel down, and helps you save a little bit of money from not having to put so many screws in the roof. So to secure the roofing panels, we use these 1-inch. These are actually not self-tapping. Those were a little bit more expensive, but because we were using plastic carbonate stuff instead of metal, you didn't have to have self-tapping screws. So these do have what you would call a hex head, or a socket head or whatever. You don't use a Phillips head or a flat head to put these down because you really want to get some torque on them. And I did get ones that have the self-sealing rubber washer that seals the hole after you screw it down, and that's obviously to keep water from dripping into the greenhouse. We've kind of just jumped ahead. Since putting the roof on, I went ahead and just did most of the framing. The reason why is in this particular video, I'm not going to be showing me doing a lot of the stuff that I'm talking to you about or telling you about. The reason why is that it's already going to be an extremely long video. It's already going to be packed full of information, and I also am doing the time-lapse video, so you know, there's not going to be any footage of me actually doing what I'm talking about. So I went ahead and did almost all the framing, and I'm just going to go through and tell you what I did and why I did it. As you can see right here, you know, the white is what we did the first round of framing. Me and Noah, I came in and painted it all. The clean boards is what I've done since putting the roof on. We've got essentially a 24-inch pony wall across the bottom all the way around, and that is for the tin I talked about. And as above that, you can see there's different boards kind of in different shapes. Essentially what I did is that I got all my windows together and I started just kind of playing an ultimate game of Tetris with the windows, finding which windows would fit in which holes. And once I found, you know, like essentially a row of windows that would work, I would go ahead and frame them, test fit them, move on to the next one. Honestly, it worked out pretty well. Pretty much everything has been filled in. There are just a couple of areas that I had to come up with some creative ways of solving the problem. One being particularly above the door. I don't have a window that's that big, so we've got something really special that we actually thought of going there. Another area is above these two window panes, and I've got a solution for that. It's gonna have one on both sides. As you can see on this side, I have not finished framing the windows in. This is the only section I have left to actually frame. All right, let me go over now the different ways that I assembled all this and how it all came together. There's Kit and George coming out to see what I'm doing as always. So I used a framing nailer to do all the nailing for the parts that I could use nails for, like this part under here, I would nail from underneath. And I used 3 1/4 inch nails. There are a couple of places where I could not get a nail gun or a long enough nail to be able to secure the board. So I used a special jig tool called a Craig jig. I just really love the Craig jig. It's essentially a pocket hole jig. And what I mean by pocket hole is this. See these 2 holes right here? Those are pocket holes. Down in those holes are screws that screw into this board. And so any place where I couldn't get a nail to come through and hit the board, I would do pocket holes. And I'm gonna show you what the jig looks like. So this is just a scrap piece. I'm not actually gonna be using it, but I'll show you how the Craig jig works. Just real quick. I'm not going to go into a full tutorial on this. They have plenty of videos on YouTube that if you guys decide to get one, which I do recommend for any kind of furniture building or really anything, I use this all the time. You attach the jig to the bottom of the board. So this is the side that would be being screwed into. Once you've got it attached, that comes with a bit like this. It's got a stop on it. You would screw that into the jig. It makes a pocket hole. Now once you have a pocket hole, you buy these Craig screws. You don't have to use these. I do recommend them because they also give you a special square-headed bit that's long enough to go down and descend the pocket hole. Honestly, the pocket hole joints are stronger than almost any other joint you can use, and so that's why I highly recommend it, and I use it all the time. So you guys are just gonna have to engage your own creative thinking and problem-solving skills to essentially frame in your own windows depending on which kind of windows you have. You know, if you're using aluminum frame windows, it would probably look different. I decided to use all of the wooden framed windows because I think it's going to give it the character that I want. After that is I'm actually going to go ahead and install all the windows into the holes that I have. I'm going to secure them. At that point, I'm going to be using white caulk to caulk all the seams and seal everything. On a couple of windows, I'm going to have to use a 1x material or something skinnier. Like I think I've got some cedar pickets that I may rip down into like a 1.5 inch or 1 inch wide strip. And I'm gonna use those to add in a stop. One thing I wanted to go over before I start putting the windows in and getting all that part done is on the front end, I knew that this was going to be a problem, and I decided this solution, for me, the better way to solve the problem. You could have done it a couple of different ways. I'll go ahead and show you what I'm talking about, and you guys can decide for yourselves how you want to fix it. To me, this was the best way for the time and the amount of effort it takes. The problem is that everything on our framing is completely square, even. You know, it all lines up, the numbers. The issue is that the floor, or the ground, essentially is sloping. Our whole property is essentially a slope. Jessica's first greenhouse, I actually dug out and leveled everything first before putting it in. This particular build, with the way that the ground is and how much more wet and clay there is, I decided not to do that. So what does that mean? Let me show you. That does not exactly line up to be the same. Also, if you pay close attention, a lot of the boards from the left side to the right side are increasing from this side to the right, from this side to the right, from this side down is increasing. This one was pretty level, but this one was the worst. From this side to this side, it increases. That's because the ground's sloping, and I decided not to come in and dig out the foundation and level everything on the ground floor. Some people might have chosen to do it that way. What I did was, I knew I had 26 inches on the tin. I was only going to use 24 inches of it. I'm actually using a 1x4 piece of trim, so that's actually 3.5 inches wide. I'm boxing in all of the tin that gets put on. So that's going to give me some play on being able to hide the visual effect of the slope. And honestly, I feel like you guys will have a hard time noticing once we get it all in here, get the shelves in and all that. I decided to do it this way because I just didn't want to put the time in and delay this project even longer, digging out and leveling and compacting all the ground. And honestly, it's not going to affect the functionality of the greenhouse. Part of my finished carpentry, OCD, you know, want everything to be perfect, was a little bit bothered because of the slopes and the different measurements and all that. But I think when it's all said and done, it'll be fine. All the windows are back in the holes that I test fitted and framed out. They're screwed in. I'll show you real quick the different ways that I kept the windows inside the holes and was able to secure them. So for example, on this window right here, let's fit in. I put a screw on each side into the bottom plate. And on the outside, I angled screws into the side that hit the sidewall in all 4 corners. So all these 4 front windows are done the same way. On this side, this is the back side, I put in these little blocks to keep the window from moving to the inside of the greenhouse. And up here, this is overlapping the back 2x4. And so I just put screws, 2 screws per window, and on a couple of these, so like these 2 middle ones and then this one, I put a screw in connecting these 2 windows and did that all the way down. If you're gonna use screws, which I do highly suggest, I would not suggest using a nail gun of any kind. And the reason why is that these are old windows and they're not really shock resistant at all. So if there's too much vibration, they'll just shatter, and they're really dangerous that way. I went ahead and pre-drilled all my holes, and I didn't over-torque them with the impact, so there was a minimal amount of vibration. And with the pre-drill, everything just kind of slid in and went together really smooth. I didn't break anything while installing windows. So on a couple of windows where there wasn't a good place to screw things in, or if there was a large gap that I needed to seal up, I cut these 1 by 1.5, I think they're 1.5 inch strips out of cedar fence pickets, and I just nailed them in with a stapler, and that essentially is holding the window in place. And then I would find other ways to use different screws and pilot holes to secure them in. So like this window has a 1 by piece on it. This one right here. Not all of them got it, just the ones I felt like really needed it. This one got a 2x4 above the top because there was just a 2-inch gap up there. Once I had all the windows mounted and secured, we went ahead and spent almost 2 days taping off with paper and painter's tape all the windows because I really wanted everything to be the same color. What's next is one of probably the most gratifying things that I'm gonna get to do on this job is I'm gonna start peeling off all of the tape and the paper to reveal mostly clean windows. I'll probably have to clean up some edges with a razor. But once all that's done, it's gonna look awesome. Go ahead and put the tin along the bottom. I've got the 1x4 trim that we're gonna use. Our big open spaces right here are for those sliding glass doors that we're using. So after about 6 or 7 days of just really awesome weather, it's been really cool and really sunny, we've gotten a ton done. For example, all the regular windows are in. They're all doing great. We got these big windows in. Yesterday, I had some help here, so I had someone help me lift them because they're pretty heavy. I salvaged these out of some really heavy duty sliding doors, And I'm really glad I did because I love how big the window is without any obstructions. To keep the window in place on both sides is a 1.5 by cedar picket that I ripped down and painted to match, and essentially just crown stapled it in, and that is sandwiching the window in place. I did the exact same thing on this side. We've got glass in all of the places. The only thing we have left is above the door, which there's going to be something custom made for this, and we'll probably not going to have it done before we reveal the greenhouse because of the fact that it is being custom. So we'll do it in a later video, but it's going to be pretty awesome. For above these windows, as you can see, I'm going to tilt the camera up. These windows right here, I'm going to build vents, and I'm looking into getting some automatic openers from Amazon for the vent windows that I do build. Another thing that we'll progress through is the tin along the bottom. So I've got it going all the way around, which is essentially sealed up the greenhouse. All the 1x4 primed boards that are inside will trim this out in a box. I'm gonna go ahead and seal all the lines, so the tops and the sides. I'm gonna use an expanding foam. I'm doing that for heat purposes. I'm gonna be able to hold as much heat as possible. When I did the windows right before I painted, I went around with caulk, or white caulk with silicone in it. Anyways, what you would normally use to seal up windows or to do trim in your house or anything like that. Some windows that the old sealant, I don't know if it was caulk or something else, but it got kind of dry and was cracking out. So I would come through and I would run a new caulk line to seal the glass in place. And so I did all that, you know, caulked all the lines in between the windows, and I'm just trying to seal it up as much as I can to hold as much heat. I'm also gonna be working on the door. This is the door that we've gone with. We've already got it primed and painted. These slats on the reverse side, I went ahead and sealed them up with some plywood, and I caulked all the lines so it would also be sealed for heat. So those slats actually don't work. And on the top part, there's a lip right here and it goes all the way around. I've got plexiglass that I'm going to fit in here and trim out, so it'll have a really clear plexiglass window on top. So the cool thing about that door is that her dad found it on the side of the road in Sherwood and picked it up and thought that would be a great greenhouse door. And I agree, Jessica loves it. I think it's gonna work well. Alrighty, man, we're making lots of progress. This should be the last week of work on the window greenhouse. Okay, it's kind of windy outside, so I gotta talk inside the greenhouse. 1 5/8 inch screws, attach the tin. I attached it on the outside edges. I did not attach any screws through the tin in the middle because I didn't want to have to run the trim to hide them. So essentially the trim, part of it is to help make the tin pop. The other thing is that it hides all of the edges and all the screws and washers to attach it. On the trim, normally you would use like a finish gun or some kind of nail gun. This particular way of trimming, you cannot, because the tin is rippled and it's got the screws and the washers. So you actually got to attach those with screws. And I used my go-to Starhead Deckmate, and these are 2-inch screws. That's what I use to attach all the trim around the outside edges of the tin. I've got a few more details on those. I've got to put some caulk lines in and seal up some spaces that I don't want water to build up in and rot the tin out. As far as wood, I used a 1x4 primed board. You can find those at Home Depot or any of your normal lumber stores. The reason I got that is because I knew I was going to be painting the trim to match the rest of the greenhouse. I didn't want to have to prime it and then paint it, so I went ahead and got the boards pre-primed. It costs just a little bit extra, and even in some cases, depending on where you're getting it from, primed 1x4 can cost less than a regular 1x4. I think actually in my case, it costs less. And the reason why it would do that is that so many contractors are buying a 1x4 primed for normal house trim and different jobs that the supply and demand helps them keep the cost of that down, whereas a regular unprimed 1x4 is more expensive because it's less common to be purchased. That worked out good, saved us a little bit of money. The other thing I need to update real quick is on the door. So as you can see behind me, I've got the plexiglass in. Essentially what I did is I cut the plexiglass to fit inside the opening of the door, and then I built this 1 by 3/4 of an inch by 1.5 inch trim on the outside and nailed it around the outside edges after I sealed the edges of the plexiglass. That's completely sealed. A couple other details. is I use these really cool ornamental hinges. They cost a little bit extra, but details like that Jessica loves. I got door pulls to match. So I also did a pull on the inside for whenever you step into the greenhouse, and I really like the locking mechanism. I actually ended up changing out these into the original greenhouse, and so once I did that and it worked so well, I used them again on this one, and let me just show you why I like them so much. So this is the locking mechanism I use, and the reason why I like this is because once you fit it into the hole and you turn it sideways, it's putting pressure on the door. So there's that kind of lock on both sides of the door. Another thing I did to help seal in the heat is I did this strip right here. So what that does is it's giving the door something to overlap on, and I put this foam on it. I've got to touch it up some, but this foam, as the door presses up against it and this latch helps put some pressure on it, it really seals. I've learned from working on the other greenhouse to think about sealing the door off on the front end. I did a lot more planning. This door will seal in heat and humidity a lot better than the other ones. I've got to go get the materials and build all the shelving for inside, plus Jessica's workstation. And we've decided that we're actually going to get non-treated boards. The other greenhouse is all treated because of all the watering, but we're gonna do non-treated boards for this one. And we're actually going to paint all the shelves the same color as the door to kind of help break up the white and tie the door in. Number 3 is I've got to build custom vents, and I'm actually going to order a couple of automatic vent openers that essentially how it works is it's got some kind of liquid inside, and when it reaches a certain temperature, it'll automatically vent the greenhouse for Jess so she doesn't have to keep coming out and adjusting everything. I'm actually gonna build those myself. I'm gonna use a planer, a biscuit joiner, my table saw, and some 1x4. And what I'm gonna do is I've got this extra piece of plexiglass left over, and I'm going to cut windows and do all the math stuff and figure out, you know, how big of a plexiglass piece versus the 1x4 and all that. That's gonna be kind of an extensive job, but it's really not that much left. It'll probably take me half a day to do the vent. Last thing, I'm putting a 6-foot deck out the front door for Jess, and it's going to be a cypress, so I'm not gonna plane the cypress for the deck. And so it'll be a similar color as the boards inside, but it'll be rough to give you more traction so you don't slip and slide whenever it's raining. We're getting so close, working on the deck, about to get it on the ground. I wanted to go ahead and show you what I did for support. I didn't build up a deck like you would think, like, you know, like on a house. Instead, I dug out footers, filled them with gravel, and I'm gonna level them as best as I can just by adding a scoop of gravel here or there. And so this is what that looks like. Underneath each of these treated decking planks is about 3 inches of gravel. And I did 4 footers, and then I'll lay the decking planks on top of that to keep it from direct contact with the wood. Even though I am using cypress, which is a naturally water resistant and pest resistant wood, it's not completely resistant. Putting the treated down will help it all last longer. And then I'm going to run my deck planks, which I'm using the rough cut cypress for that, across it. And then that's gonna be it. There's not gonna be any handrail or anything like that. We're making our final pushes. We're getting really close. Sweet Jess is setting up the new Greenstalks that are gonna go on the deck. Benny's helping her plant the flowers. The deck's down, as you can see behind me. We used the 3-inch deck mate screws, and I did lay garden fabric up underneath it so that way there's no weeds going through the cracks. We left about an 1/8 inch gap between each board to give water a chance to drain off so it doesn't pull up on the deck. And the other thing we got done yesterday is on the inside. Did all the walls. So the first thing I did was I ran a can of expanding foam and foamed all the top, side, and bottom edges. That'll help seal it off from heat and air leaking out. And then we came through with, was gonna use the rough cut cypress like I did for the deck, but they're 2x and they're super thick, and I'm running out of time. And honestly, they're too cool of boards to plane down to, you know, an acceptable thickness for inside. And so I ended up just buying cedar pickets. Gets the same effect, smells great. I'm gonna save that cypress for some other projects that would require a more sturdy board, and I just felt like that was the best choice, and this helped me get things done. So these are just cedar fence pickets, and I cut off the little noses, the little tapered noses or whatever. Anyways, turned out good. Smells great in here. Next steps is Jessica's getting the Greenstalks done. I've got all the material, but you can see it sitting out here. The white 4x4s are painted or primed, and I got the 2x6s right here. This is all the materials for the shelving inside. So I'm going to be working on getting that finished painted, getting the shelving in. I've got to build the vents still. That shouldn't take me too long. And then I've got to install some other hardware stuff. And I've got a couple other just finishing touches for the inside. On the cedar pickets, when I installed them, I used a crown stapler. I think it was 1.5 inch staples. That gives us a lot of bite while nailing them in. On the shelving, I could use framing nails, but I think what I'm going to do is probably use screws. I'm not 100% sure on that yet. I'll know more once I start assembling it. But I may use framing nails because it's not gonna have that much weight, and if it does start to come apart at all, I can throw a screw in it later. So I don't know, I'll decide that once I get to it. We are so close to releasing the time lapse. I think we're 2 days. What's today? I'm having a hard time with my days. Today's Friday, so yeah, we're 2 days away from releasing the reveal of the greenhouse. I'm pretty excited. This has come together really awesome. It's been one of my favorite projects I've ever done. Well, I've done the shelving. I'm gonna go over that with you real quick and explain the fabric that we're gonna put on top to hold all the trays and some of the other finishing touches we're putting on. So on the shelving, these are untreated 4x4s. And we primed and painted them to kind of match the door. These are 2x6s. The reason I used a 2x6 is because when they're standing up vertically, they're less likely to sag. On the shelves at the other greenhouse, I actually used 2x4s and I did treated. And the 2x4s, with the weight of all the trays and the seedlings and all that, they were starting to sag pretty good. So I went ahead and did a 2x6 for all the new shelving. And I put in these braces to help hold the weight. Once we get the fabric up here that's going to hold the trays. I did end up using a nail gun and some galvanized ribbed nails, which are pretty stout nails. They don't come out real easily. This thing's pretty stout. Like, I could definitely stand on it. It'll hold my weight. What we're going to lay out on top of the shelves is this, I think it's rabbit cage or something. It's a 24-inch high, 25 foot long, 1 inch by 2 inch holes. 14 gauge galvanized for durability. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I got this at the Tractor Supply. You can see it's a 1 inch by 2 inch. This will lay flat like so. And this is the exact same stuff that I put in the greenhouse on top of the hill. And it's been awesome. So we're just gonna redo the same method. I'm about to lay that out. I'm going to use a combination of things to secure that to the shelves. I'm going to use some 1 1/4 fencing staples, and then on the stuff closest to the windows, I may not use a hammer in case it slips off and I don't want to punch through the window. So I may use a small screw with a washer. I have a bunch of washers left over from putting the tin on, and so I'll probably use those with some screws, and on the back side, like I said, the stuff closest to the windows, I'll secure it down with a washer and some screws. There's the automatic vent opener installed. I had to add this block of wood to get it to fit right because I was running into issues with the clearance for the mechanism. But I made it work with that block. Same exact thing had to be done on the other side. They work really awesome. We've kind of already tweaked them. And you know, when it starts to get about 75, 80-ish degrees, they start to kick open and they vent it out really well. One of the cool things about where the vents are and how it kind of just circumstantially worked out to be really good is that the vents ended up being at the highest point of the building, so when the vents kick open and heat naturally rises, it literally just rolls right out the vents. I actually didn't necessarily do that on purpose. The main reason why I stuck the vents there is that the two windows on each side fit pretty well, and that was just the gap that was left. So I thought, oh, that'll be a good place for the vents because I don't have any windows that'll fit that. And then it also, like I said, circumstantially worked out that they were also at the highest point of the whole building. If you are doing something like this, you might consider doing the exact same thing because it vents the greenhouse really well, especially with only having two vents in it. Another finishing touch that I was really impressed with how it turned out and was just kind of something in my own mind, and it really worked, was the shelving unit. I actually have one on both sides of the greenhouse. And I found these essentially RV table or RV shelf brackets on Amazon. They're rated to hold 350 pounds. So they're being rated to hold that much weight. They can pretty much hold anything that Jessica can throw at them. My idea behind the tables was to make that a potting station that was also easy to clean up. I didn't put a lip on this front end right here, so that way when Jessica was done potting, I didn't put a lip on the front end, so when Jessica's done potting, she can release the brackets, the shelf will fall, and we're gonna get some kind of container to put underneath it that'll catch all the dirt. This was pretty simple to build. This is just a sheet of plywood, and it's not even the really expensive plywood, it's just normal 5/8 inch plywood. And I did have a router, and I routed off this front edge to kind of round it off, so that way there was less splinters and chances for it to nick you and get caught on stuff. So it's a nice rounded edge. I just do some stain on it, some clear coat. This is just a 1.5 inch 1x material. I think it actually was a 1.5 inch primed. I had this left over from some of the stuff we did in the basement. I basically just nailed that with the crown stapler on the outside edges to give it the lip, and then mounted it to the brackets, and it went in and installed pretty well. It's a fairly basic thing, but I think it's going to be super functional. One of the last finishing touches I put in was this little workstation for Jessica, which I did not intend for it to be a potting station, more of like a place to come and write or to film devotionals or different things, or just to kind of be in the greenhouse, because I know that she really enjoys being in these kinds of spaces. So the tables were for potting. This is more of a workstation. This table is built out of the same sheet of plywood that the two shelves were, and I still actually had a chunk left over that I'm going to do something else with. I just haven't decided. And it's just trimmed out kind of very similarly with no front and edge, only I used a 1x4 for this edge to kind of give it more of a lip around the windows. So it'll just be a functional space for Jessica to come and hang out. A couple other small ideas is we put hooks up for her roo aprons. I found this little metal toolbox in our garage. I think it was for like a picnic or something. Anyways, I mounted it to the 4x4s for her to hold her tools in. We've also got a rack here to hold some tools also. Those may not all stay right there. She may change those out for different types of tools. And the last thing, which is one of my favorite details from this whole design and how it turned out, was these strands of lights that honestly, it's really cool. It's very similar to the ones we have at the other greenhouse, but because this is so clear, these lights really shine at night especially. This makes the greenhouse look really awesome at night. So one quick thing I wanted to go over, the vents. You know, I was explaining in the video how I was making custom vents, and I did. The issue I ran into is that that's a very extensive process. You're going to need a lot of carpentry skills, and there's a certain amount of tools you're going to have to make that happen. Top of the fact that it's a pretty lengthy and detailed process, it would be another 30 minutes of the video just explaining how to make the custom window. With that being the case, I decided not to include that on this. If there's enough response of people saying, man, I really want to be able, to make these custom vents to fit in a specific space, in the future, I'd be willing to make an extra vent with some of the extra materials I have and make a video separate of how to make that vent or window. Honestly, it has other applications than just a greenhouse vent. I mean, it could be a window for a cold frame or a chicken coop or anything. And so I can see the value in that, but I could not justify adding that onto this video because this video is already 50 minutes long. I just made the decision that I'm not going to include it in this one. So just know that I made the custom vents. I'll help you guys out if I can in the future to make your own. Guys, that's all I have. I'm pretty sure I covered all the details. I've been kind of going over things on these final edits and trying to think if there's anything else I missed. I'm sure that there is. I encourage you just ask questions. If there's a detail that you want more clarification on, I'll be available, and I'm actually going to be watching this video in the comments to try and help people as best I can. And so I do appreciate you guys making the premiere such an awesome success and being so encouraging about the greenhouse and the build. I hope that this video is what I intended it to be, and it helps you guys kind of figure out how you want to put your greenhouse together. That's it for me this time, guys. Until next time, God bless you.